The white man was happily taking pictures of the whole family. The black boy who was newly adopted could only watch with envy. However, at this moment, the host suddenly asked her to come and take pictures together. Although it was a bit difficult to believe, she still stood up and greeted the photographer and stood carefully next to the family. With the camera, the tall black boy felt the warmth of the home for the first time. His fate will be completely changed because of this family. This is a real thing. The movie adapted from the incident Michael, although he is only 16 years old, but his height has reached 2 meters. The weight was even more than 300 pounds. However, this was not because of the good family conditions. On the contrary, he began to live a displaced life from birth. Because his father abandoned them very early, their mother was another hero. Therefore, the government deprived him of all his children. In this way, Michael and a dozen brothers and sisters were sent to different families. However, in a few short years, he was successively retired because he ate too much. Compared with other brothers and sisters, this time, Michael, it's quite lucky because my adoptive father is a kind-hearted person. He hoped to win the opportunity for Michael to go to school, so the two came to a nearby Christian school together. The teacher who was responsible for receiving them was a basketball coach. At first, he was unwilling to accept Michael because the school was basically white. However, when he saw Michael playing basketball outside the window, he immediately changed his mind. It turned out that although Michael was big, he was as flexible as Red Goldbow. Not only did he dribble and shot with agile shot, the dunk was even more light and easy to raise his hand until he captured the coach. He was amazed at his sports talent, so he recommended him to the principal. However, all teachers, including the principal, unanimously disagree with his application because the file shows that his intelligence services are only 80, and his grades in each subject are not qualified. No school will be willing to accept this hot-handed taro. Principal said to the coach in a blunt manner that, "I know you think of his athletic ability. If the cultural class is not good, he doesn't even have the chance to participate in the sports." Although the facts are true, the coach said to put aside the facts and not talk about the admission of the microphone. Kerr is also the right choice because we are the church school. God certainly hoped to give the unlucky children a chance. Since he had moved out of God, other teachers had to agree, so McLean was lucky to enter school. However, in his first class, he took the mother's exam. During the process of passing the paper, the girl in the front seat disliked McCall very much because she found that the big head was bigger than her. However, McCall did not care, but focused on borrowing the test paper. The class test was over soon, but when everyone else handed over the paper and left, McClay sat in his seat for a long time and did not move. The teacher thought he was doing the final inspection. Unexpectedly, he did not make a big deal of a question, but drew a simple sketch on the silk screen. The scene was like the most realistic portrait of his lonely heart. At night, Michael lay on the sofa of his adoptive father's house and was sleeping. Suddenly, there was a fierce argument from the building. It turned out that his adoptive mother was unwilling to support him. Although his adoptive father was still fighting hard, Michael knew that it was time to leave again. So before dawn the next day, he took the only one to change the washing. He took the first-class bus to the school's gymnasium, but he didn't want to watch the competition. Instead, he waited for the game to end and picked up the leftover rice flours that others ate. Wait until the night, the public laundry room, he came back here. Not only could he shrank all night, but he could also clean his clothes for free. I thought I would go on like this, but fate once again brought him dawn. That night the sky was drizzling, the air seemed to have become cold, but Michael could only walk in his white short sleeves and walked on the road without light and direction, without light. Just then, a luxury car suddenly stopped not far away and then kindly asked him where he was going. After hearing that she was going to the gym, Annie immediately realized that something was wrong, because the gym was already closed at that time. So she asked her again why she wanted to go there. Facing the unfair woman's impulse, McClay could only tell the matter carefully. "I have no place to go tonight, so I can only go there together." Hearing this, Annie was instantly moved to the silhouette. She decided to keep the poor boy for a night. She did this because her younger son had told her that McCall was a new student. But because of her dark skin and tall body, she was often unpredictable or super windy by her classmates. Only the little boy, the socialist Han bandit, expressed his kindness and help. Soon after, he rode his bike and parked in a noble villa. Looking at the Shehua Michael in front of him, he felt as if he was dreaming. Because she had never seen such a luxurious residence, Anne introduced Michael to her daughter and placed Michael in the sofa in the living room, because there was only one customer left, full of miscellaneous items. Then she told Michael's toilet location and said she could go upstairs to find me at any time. However, as soon as she returned to the building, she began to worry about her impulse because she was afraid that her own mountain would bring a ruthless steel to the family. After all, they didn't understand Michael. However, it proved that she hid the young man's belly with a villain's heart. The next morning, it was discovered that McCool not only did not steal anything, but instead cleaned up the bed sheets neatly and left quietly without saying a word. Out of the guilt of more than a few people and the kindness in their bones, Annie hurried out and called Michael back. Since today was the Thanksgiving day at noon, Annie prepared a large table of generous dishes, but Michael only made a little rice, fearing that she would be annoyed again if she ate too much. Not only that, when others were holding food and relaxing on the sofa while eating and watching TV, he was the only one sitting lonely at the dining table and eating alone. Annie Jianzhuang turned off the TV directly, then moved all the food to the dining table, and everyone else came to the dining table. Then the family began to hold hands and pray. At this time, the sister took the initiative to extend her hand to Michael, so Michael also reached over and listened to Annie's prayer. She secretly opened her eyes without trust. This moment was like dreaming. Just yesterday, she was still homeless and wandering on the streets, but today she really felt the warmth of home. After the meal, Annie was preparing to buy some new clothes for Michael. He didn't want Annie's family to destroy him anymore, so he insisted that there were still remains in his house. Helplessly, Annie could only follow her intentions and come to the other side of the city. As their luxury cars stopped in the dilapidated streets, they immediately attracted a group of black people who were slutty. McKee knew how dangerous and dirty this gang was, so when Annie untied her safety belt and prepared to get out of the car, she immediately stopped the other party and then came to the cottage in her memory alone. However, there was no place to fly here, the house was sealed, and the mother didn't know where to go. That's all. She finally broke up with her biological mother and contacted her. She had only left her life and had nowhere to go. After digesting all the bitterness in the corner, Mikel returned to the car again. It was not so much that Annie was worried. She pretended not to care and said that her mother was not at home. Maybe she moved away for a moment. Annie understood what she had had, but knowing that words comfort only adds more to the pain. So she didn't say anything but brought Mikel directly to the nearby mall. Since there was a black floor here, Annie was a little scared, but Mikel comforted her. "You don't have to worry. I will protect you very soon." They came to a clothing store and chose a few super big t-shirts in one go. The next day, Annie sent 2 children to school. She was very moved and relieved. In order to make this happiness last, she took the initiative to invite Michael to stay for a long time. When Michael agreed happily, she immediately packed up the customer. I moved the new bed and watched Annie Michael busy in the room. I said with emotion that I had never had this before. At first, Annie thought she was talking about it. I didn't think that his intention was that he had never had a bed that belonged to him. This made Annie count because she dared not imagine how much human suffering this poor boy had experienced. After the problem of Wenbao was solved, Michael was finally learned and interested. His academic performance gradually improved. The improvement in cultural courses also gave her the qualification to participate in the spring football match. In celebration of her father, Xiaoen's decision to lead the whole family to Michael was also in the mouth of his little son during the meal at the Haohua restaurant. I really learned that their family's financial resources not only runs more than 80 chain restaurants in Montex, but also many other industries. Annie is a famous interior designer. The influence of Michael is not underestimated. But what surprised Michael the most was that Annie in college was the captain of the team of the team. Now her daughter has become a member of the team of the team of the team of Shaw. While she is talking, a group of people came to the door of the restaurant. But because of the appointment time, before he arrived, Annie asked her to go to the library first and bought several storybooks. Not only that, when they returned home after dinner, Annie also recited the story before bed for the children as before. Michael, who had never had such an experience, was very impressed by the godly daughter, who was also blessed to be at the door because such a scene carries a lot. The beautiful times of childhood, when Christmas comes, the whole family takes photos as usual. But unlike in the past, this time there was a black boy in the camera. When the photo was made into a greeting card and sent to relatives and friends, the rumors in the imagination also followed, and Annie became the focus of hot discussions among the high-ranking noble women. Some people say that she adopted black people because of the white people because of guilt towards black people. Some people say that she wanted to promote her own store through charity, and some even began to worry about her daughter's safety. After all, Mike is a tall black person whom she never knew. Facing the doubts and ridicule of the husbands, Annie chose not to argue because she did not want to talk too much with these dirty-minded people. But after returning home, she found her daughter the first time and asked if she felt uncomfortable with McLee's presence. Although she was indeed troubled by some gossip, the kind-hearted daughter still hoped McLee could stay forever because she couldn't bear to see McLee fall on the street again. Not only that, when she saw McCall and gently interacted with her little friends, the only concern in her heart completely disappeared. He believed that McLee's simplicity and kindness should be exchanged for the gentleness of the world. So the next day in the library, when the students were all cold eyes at Macaulay, he took the initiative to sit next to Macaulay. Soon McClue officially joined the rugby team, watching him alone be able to twist 4 people's heavy coaches to heart and feel happy and relieved, feeling that he had finally recruited a member of the best. However, when the training began, he almost lost all his confidence because McClue had embraced him. Have excellent physical conditions, but don't know anything about rugby skills. You either fall your opponent or carry someone to chase the ball. No matter how the coach commands, he doesn't seem to understand. Moreover, his attention cannot be concentrated. He is often attracted by the balloons that float by the sky. Not only that, the coach also found that McLee doesn't seem to want to attack others. If this continues, he will not only not be able to participate in the spring season, but also may not even have the chance to play in the autumn season. In order to make McLee improve quickly, the young boy who loves football began to use the summer vacation to train him. From lying down to sitting back and running back, he will be lucky. Move to raise your legs from reaction ability to tactical running position. The little son can be said to have used all the training methods he could imagine for Makel. Sometimes he is willing to act as the fitness equipment that Makel needs. After a holiday training, Makel's physical fitness and football knowledge have also been greatly improved. Perhaps he no longer wants to be a black household. That day, Makel suddenly found Annie and asked her to help him apply for a driver's license. Having a driver's license in the United States is equivalent to having an identity card. Minka. When Annie agreed and took her to sign up, she found that her information could not be found in the evidence system. This also means that when McClay was born, she was not registered as the current name, since McClay didn't know what her real name was. So Anne, who had no choice, decided to adopt McClay legally so that McClay could re-register her identity. However, when she told her husband Sean about this idea, Sean raised an objection for the first time because a real adoption meant taking responsibility for her whole life, and McClay basically didn't say much. They couldn't understand her past even if she took her. Even if you go to see a psychologist, you may not be able to ask one. So, after all, what Michael is best at forgetting that he never gets angry or cares about what happened in the past. In fact, this is Michael's long-term injury to self-protection made him feel sensitive. Although he thought Shoen's statement was very reasonable, Annie still insisted on himself because his soft membrane and hard bubbles were finally agreed. Then he also agreed, and then he had to handle the adoption process. I thought this process would be very complicated, but the staff told Annie that because Michael's custody was, the government therefore only needs to fill in the chapters simply. That's it. However, Annie thought that she should inform the biological mother of the person being nurtured. So after a few turns, she found Michael's biological mother in a chaotic street. Because of the long-term sucking and eating, the mother's noodles have yellow skin and no sperm, and the place where they live also smells rotten. But in order not to lose face in front of outsiders, she still thought she had dressed up before sitting down and talking to Annie. After learning that Annie was going to take care of her own son, she suddenly reminded that if Mackley disappeared one day, you don't have to be surprised. Because no matter which family I was sent to, he would come to take care of me. I was talking, and he suddenly started crying again because he understood that he had not fulfilled his mother's duties, and even no one of the child's biological fathers was. As a mother, Anne understood his feelings very much and said that even if I adopted McCall, you would be his mother. If you want to see him, he didn't want his child to see him now. What's more, it might be the best if it doesn't hinder his son's new life. Choice is also considered the final compensation. After solving all adoption problems, Annie specially organized a family meeting and asked in front of all the family whether Michael would really be part of this family. Unexpectedly, Michael felt very puzzled after hearing this because, in his heart, he had long thought that he had been truly accepted and had long been a member of this family. Everyone laughed as soon as they said this, but Annie suddenly turned red because she was very happy and relieved. In the future, Michael would no longer have to wander. He will gradually become. After a while, Michael got his driver's license as he wished. To celebrate, Shoen also bought him a leather card. Because he received gifts for the first time in his life and was so expensive, McClay couldn't wait to ask his son to drive for a ride together. However, the two of them had not been able to go out far, and they ran into a truck on the same road because they were addicted to car music. When Annie rushed to the scene, she saw that the leather card had been hit, almost burst, but the child was only injured. The police told him that this was simply a miracle. Under normal circumstances, a child of this age will directly twist his neck when he hits the airbag. However, the air pockets did not know why they changed their direction, and the younger son also saved his life. After confirming that the youngest son was not in danger of life, Nee immediately went over to check Mixel's situation. At this time, McCool was squatting on the side of the road, holding his head and ruling himself deeply. Seeing the situation, Annie immediately comforted her and said, "The accident happened just an accident, and your brother was not a big deal, so you don't have to blame yourself too much." After hearing this, McCool finally put down his arm, and at this moment, Annie found that his arm was covered in blood. It turned out that the moment the airbag hit, it was McClay without hesitation and blocked her arms in front of her little son. Suddenly, Anne thought that when she checked McClay's report sheet, a teacher told him that McClay's protection awareness test exceeded 98% of the state. At that time, he didn't dare to believe that the test results are not exaggerated. Because the injury was not serious, Michael quickly returned to football training, but his performance was still bad. It's not that it's perfect. In fact, the coach plans to give up and struggle after watching it. But Annie, who was watching outside the court, thought of an excellent training method. Then she came to Michael, then pulled over to the 4-point team in the team and said, "To protect her as much as I protect me, the rest of the team are family members who need protection, and no one can hurt them." Obviously, Annie knows the teachings of talented teachers very well, and under her correct guidance, Michael was sure to be awakened and so on. After the game, the opponents became his toys. None of them was his opponent. The coach looked at it and stared at him. After looking back, he immediately ran to ask Annie for advice. Annie only said one thing: you need to fully understand your team. Soon after, Michael finally welcomed the first official game in his life. The family members also came to the scene to shout for him. However, he lacked game experience. He always let his opponent find a defense loophole, and the other party changed flexibly. The tactics made him completely unable to touch his head and didn't know which one to intercept. At this time, both on and off the stage began to madly humiliate McCall. He was a paper tiger with a sensation. Because he was alone, Annie stood up and scolded the man in the back row. He shouldn't belittle his ears. He could not change the situation of the battle on the court. So he hurriedly called the coach's phone and told everyone not to play a slider, and quickly hugged the ball and rushed to the ball. However, the coach could not follow his instructions, so he stopped the phone and then quit. At this time, the offense and defense exchanged positions, but they were still at the disadvantage and lost points again and again. The momentum of the team members gradually declined, and the opponent's provocation became more frequent. Some even kicked McCall hard in the head after he fell. Although this was a very serious violation, the referee not only ignored him, but also gave him a serious warning when the coach raised doubts. The coach, who could not bear it, began to get angry, pointing at the referee's nose and saying, "My team members are my children, and I will protect them like I do to protect my son if you don't. I will definitely not give up on the rules strictly." But before he could finish speaking, McLean hugged him. Then he happily said, "Don't worry that I am here with the coach." It turned out that the coach's words once again aroused McLean's desire to protect himself as a family member. So when he returned to the court, he began to explode completely, and he was like a dirt-pushing machine, constantly pushing the back leg of the opponent who kicked him in the head. If it weren't for the whistle sounding in time, he wouldn't have just thrown the person out of the field, but would have pushed the other party to the station and let him take a taxi and leave. Not only that, in the next game, he also defeated his opponent's defense with his own strength and turned the game against the wind and won the final victory. When he heard the audience's deaf cheers, McLean's heart was full of accomplishment. At this moment, the boy who was once confused finally found his own value on the court. The little boy, who had always been accustomed to shooting, also recorded all McLean's wonderful performances. Then he engraved the glare moments of the paint machine into a disc and sent it to all the coaches of football teams in various universities. After watching it, McLean was all over the coaches of all universities. "Your talent is profound and even more powerful." The winner flew to school the next day. Just to see Michael's ability to fight with his own eyes, Michael did not disappoint. When asked to fight against the best attacker in the team, he only took a second to drop the other side down. He watched the talent and strength share the same heads. Everyone present was as if they were watching a pearl, and they all had different conditions and competed for him to guarantee him the team's lead-in commitment to enroll in time. Mexici, who gave him the 4 years of college. It is a different way to make a difference than university. As McAltho spokesperson, the youngest son not only promised to lead the team into the first game, it is undoubtedly a great honor for fans to throw hard coins in the middle of the court. However, Annie, a famous school that is constantly in the future, was not happy because even if she applied for Michael's current cultural achievements as a sports expert, she could not meet the admission standards of major universities. Jowen felt that going to a junior college was afraid of his elders. But Annie strongly opposed it, because if she went to a junior college that was not as good as a professional school, Michael was in a professional sports movement. The opportunity for the staff will also be bathed with them. So in order not to waste this millisecond, Annie Busy spent a lot of money to invite a schoolmate, Ms. Sue, from her parents' school to her special counsel. Michael's lessons are more important than the emperor, and not to let down the hard-working people. Under the guidance of Teacher Sue, Michael's various courses, there have been huge improvements. At the same time, under Michael's leadership, the football team of the Downshot team made great progress, and finally won the American Football Private School Championship. When we turned our eyes, it was the end of the third semester. McLean had to decide which university to go to. Although he had been struggling with the 3 prestigious schools, under the gaze of the light and the attention of the reporter, he finally chose Mississippi University to take the lead. As long as McLean took the final exam for each subject, if you can meet the standards, you can graduate smoothly and enter university. Unfortunately, he failed the Chinese liberal arts department. Therefore, I have to write an essay without learning. At first, Michael slapped his brains and didn't know where to start until Shawan told him the story of the Valley of Death. 600 cavalrymen knew that they would die if they rushed into the orphan, but each of them still vowed to die as if they were back and bravely moved forward. Michael felt that this was a kind of courage and honor. After all, it was not enough to just be lucky to break through a bad life. On the contrary, courage is what leads mankind out of difficulties, while honor is the motivation to help others reach new heights. Therefore, even as an ordinary person, we must pursue courage and honor. Seeing this film from the heart, Teacher Gowan was deeply moved and finally gave Michael an excellent job. In this way, Michael's grades met all the standards and graduated smoothly. However, just when the whole family thought that he was about to have a big future, the people from the College Student Sports Association suddenly came and asked to talk to Michael alone. It turned out that after McCall chose Mississippi University, his high school coach was also poached there, and Ann and his wife also studied there and often donated money to their parents' school. Therefore, the Sports Association's people reasonably doubted that when Ann's family first adopted McCall. I just want to give away people for my alma mater. Who would give so much unconditionally to a strange black man? McClay, who heard this, suddenly realized that he was more interested in Tanina Western University, because not only Li Jiajing there, but later, Teacher Sue, who also graduated from Mississippi University, told him a horrible story about Tanina Western University. The timid man was shocked and scared although he was not only home. Everyone in this never forced him to choose Mississippi, but more or less gave him a hint that as the past species poured into his mind. McLean, who had just grown up and had not yet matured, also had doubts about the truth. He angrily found Annie to ask whether he had adopted himself for selfish desire or the real bodhisattva's heart. However, without waiting for the other party to explain, he turned around and left until late at night and did not return home. Instead, he ran back to the community where the creature was previously located and quarreled with the gangs. Unexpectedly, not only did he not get useful information, but he was ridiculed by the gang boss. After a while, McCall didn't feel relieved about their jokes. Who knew that the more they said they became, the dirtier they became? Even began to insult Annie's family. Although she had doubts about her foster parents' love, McLean, who was eager to protect her family, still couldn't help but beat the souls and souls for a while. Unexpectedly, he accidentally pushed over a baby in the baby bed. Suddenly, a sharp cry sound was made. This sound immediately reminded McLean of his childhood of shattering his own governance, and made him realize again whether it was true or false. It was Annie's family who saved herself. At the same time, Annie also began to reflect on herself that she had done so many things. It was true that McLean had never asked her about her opinion, so the next day he drove to the Black Club to look for McLean. It was just right. At this time, Mikkel also called him to meet at the nearby laundry room. So the two finally welcomed each other. When McLean was laughing, her mother always asked me to close my eyes and prevent me from seeing dirty things. This really maintained the purity of my heart. It could also help me to escape if I wanted to try, but after last night I realized that only when faced with problems can I solve them. Listen to Mikkel, who has always been unspeakable. Analyzing the blind area of personality with yourself, Annie felt comfort and emotion in her heart. At the same time, she also honestly stated that it was indeed my negligence that I had never asked you what you thought. In the future, we will respect your choices. Even if you say you don't want to study at university, we will not do it or encourage you. In fact, you can only make decisions in your life without any decisions. We as family members, they will support them. After showing their sincerity, Michael found the person he brought up again. This time, he was determined to choose Mississippi University again. When asked why, he only said one thing: "This is where my family has learned. I should follow them, and it is time for school to start." Everyone's face was filled with a smile. Yenini's eyes were wet. Although she was just an adoptive mother, her love was no less than that of a biological mother. Seeing her beloved son, she finally ended her hardships and was not as good as her. How could she not be excited? Michael also saw that her soft heart took the initiative to walk over and gave her a big hug. Then Michael successfully entered the best team in the country during the mid. Teacher Sue helped her get the best student, and the eldest daughter joined the Medalla team with my mother's footsteps, and the younger son also got everything the coach promised. The weak point is the biography film starring John Rion Coco, directed by John FKK and Quintoniale. This film is adapted from the real experience of American Ganlin athlete Michael Oher. He was selected by the Ravens in 2009 with the 23rd pick in the NFL draft in 2013 and won the NFL Super 10,000 in 2014. In 2014, he signed the Tianan Saititan team for $20 million. There is no doubt that McCall is lucky. He has extraordinary sports talent and has received good help from Anne's family. Even though I have experienced hardships, I finally recovered happiness and success. But it is a pity that Michael is now home to the same family as my parents. The beauty of the relationship has finally ended up being broken by interests. The smoke has disappeared under the eyes of interests. What makes people feel sad is that the luck that is more similar to Michael's. More unfortunate things in life are finally published in the video. A black man and Mike have the same life experience and the same sports days, but he did not have the same happiness. He was born early on his 21st birthday. Together with your own talent, they were buried in the gang struggle. We must admit that it is difficult for the small humans to compete with fate for the most part, but it is even more undeniable that to want the holy heaven to break through the dilemma of life, we must take out the courage to break the pot and sink the boat. We will fight for the last bit of strength in life. Even if we still cannot succeed in the end, we will not leave regrets in life. What's more, it is said that the more we work harder, the luckier we are. But hard work is not a mechanical repetition, but it is a sweat. When we fight difficult problems for countless days and nights, exploring like dry perseverance is actually compiled by the net of crucian carp. The accumulation of knowledge makes thinking more sensitive, and the accumulation of experience makes judgments more accurate. Just as athletes temper their instincts to win the championship in thousands of trainings, scientists capture the breakthrough light in the ocean of data. Those turning points praised as luck often only work hard to succeed and release the inevitable results, and true luck has always been the shadow of hard work. Well, today's movie will be shared here. Everyone is welcome to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to share.